Captain Minho Kang stood before the massive viewing window of the Prometheus, watching the Nexus station grow larger with each passing second. His reflection stared back at him, a man in his early 40s with tired eyes but an excited smile. Behind him, the bridge crew worked quietly, their fingers dancing over glowing controls. "We're really here," Dr. Una Park whispered beside him. She was the ship's chief scientist, a woman who had spent her entire life dreaming of this moment. After all these years of wondering if we were alone, Minho nodded. "And now we know. We're not alone. We never were." The Nexus was beyond anything humanity had imagined. It was a city in space larger than Earth's moon, with towers that stretched for miles and lights that shimmered in colors humans had no names for. Thousands of ships moved around it like insects around a hive, ships of shapes and sizes that defied logic. Some were organic, seeming to breathe. Others were pure geometry, impossible angles held together by forces Minho couldn't understand. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer called out. "They're granting us permission to dock at Bay 743. "Take us in," Minho ordered. His heart hammered in his chest. This was it. First contact. The moment that would change everything. The docking process took an hour. When the airlock finally opened, Minho led a small team into the Nexus. The air smelled strange, not bad, just different. Like metal and flowers and something else entirely. The corridor ahead was enormous, built for creatures much larger than humans. Ambassador Jisoo Lee walked beside Minho, her formal robes rustling with each step. She had been chosen to speak for humanity because she could remain calm in any situation. Minho had seen her negotiate trade deals that had saved millions of lives. If anyone could impress the council, it was her. They entered a vast chamber where the council waited. Minho's breath caught in his throat. There were so many of them. Creatures of every imaginable form sat in floating seats arranged in a circle. Some had scales. Others had fur or feathers or skin that shifted like water. Eyes of every color watched the humans enter. At the center sat Counselor Vextar, the leader. He was insectoid, with a body covered in dark blue chitin and 4 arms that ended in delicate fingers. His eyes were multifaceted, reflecting light like jewels. When he spoke, a device translated his clicking voice into perfect English. "Welcome, humans of Earth," Vextar said. His tone was polite but cool. "We have awaited this meeting." Ambassador Jisoo bowed. "We are honored to stand before the Galactic Council. We come in peace, seeking friendship and knowledge." "Of course," Vextar replied. "We will discuss the terms of contact over the coming days. Please make yourselves comfortable. We have prepared quarters for you." The first meeting seemed to go well. The council asked questions about Earth, about human culture and history. Minho answered truthfully, speaking of humanity's achievements and struggles. He talked about art and music, about the way humans had learned to work together despite their differences. But there were questions that made him uncomfortable. Questions about wars, about weapons, about how fast human technology had advanced. Each time he answered, he saw some council members exchange glances that he couldn't read. On the third day, Dr. Una made a discovery. She had been exploring the station's public networks, learning about galactic culture. By accident, she found something she wasn't supposed to see. A communication channel that wasn't properly secured. She brought it to Minho in private, her hands shaking as she showed him the data on her tablet. "They've been watching us," she said quietly, "for hundreds of years. They've had monitoring stations around our solar system. They know everything about us." Minho read through the files, his stomach sinking with each line. The council had been studying humanity since before recorded history. They had watched humans discover fire, build civilizations, fight wars, and reach for the stars. Every moment had been recorded and analyzed. "Why didn't they make contact sooner?" Minho asked. Una's face was pale. I think they were waiting to see what we'd become." That night, Minho couldn't sleep. He walked the corridors of the Nexus, his mind racing. Something felt wrong. The council's hospitality felt like a mask, hiding something darker underneath. The next morning, Ambassador Jisoo was summoned to a private meeting. She went alone as requested. When she returned 3 hours later, her face was ashen. "They've called a tribunal," she told Minho and the others, "to evaluate our compatibility with galactic civilization." "What does that mean?" Minho demanded. Jisoo's voice trembled. "It means they're deciding if we're allowed to exist." The tribunal was held in secret. Minho and his crew were not permitted to attend. They waited in their quarters, the hours stretching like years. Finally, a message came through on Minho's personal communicator. It was from a traitor they had met days earlier, an alien named Court who had seemed friendly. The message was brief. "Run. Now. They've decided." Minho didn't hesitate. He hit the emergency alarm and ordered all humans back to the Prometheus immediately. They ran through the corridors, ignoring the confused looks from other species. Some of the Council's security forces tried to stop them, but Minho's people moved too fast. They reached the ship and sealed the airlock just as the first weapons fire hit the nexus around them. Through the viewports, Minho saw something that froze his blood. Ships, hundreds of them, all converging on the docking bay. "Get us out of here," he shouted. The Prometheus tore free of the docking clamps and dove into open space. Behind them, the Council fleet gave chase. Minho watched his screens in horror as similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Every human ship, every human station, every human installation was under attack simultaneously. "Captain," the communications officer cried. "Earth, they're bombing Earth." The main screen switched to show feeds from home. Minho saw cities burning under orbital bombardment. He saw defensive fleets torn apart by weapons that moved faster than light. He saw his home, his world, his people dying by the millions. "Sir, they're right behind us," the tactical officer reported. "We can't outrun them." Minho's mind raced. There was only one option: the experimental quantum drive that Taehyun Choi's team had installed. It had never been tested outside of simulations. If it failed, they would be torn apart on a molecular level, but if they stayed, they would die anyway. "Taehyun," Minho said quietly, "activate the quantum drive." "Sir, it's not ready, or do it." Taehyun's fingers flew over his controls. The ship began to vibrate, a deep thrumming that Minho felt in his bones. The space around them started to shimmer and twist. The Council ships fired everything they had, but it was too late. Reality bent. The Prometheus vanished in a flash of impossible light, leaving only silence behind. On Earth, the bombardment continued. Cities fell, oceans boiled, the atmosphere filled with ash. 12 billion voices cried out and then were silenced. The Council erected an energy barrier around the planet, sealing it away from the rest of the galaxy. Humanity, the Council declared, had been judged and found wanting. The threat had been eliminated. The galaxy was safe once more. But in the darkness between stars, 23 ships full of survivors drifted, broken, scattered, lost, and in each one, humans who had lost everything began to realize something terrible and beautiful. They had survived, and one day they would return. The Prometheus drifted in the void, its hull scarred and broken. Emergency lights flickered in the corridors, casting everything in red shadow. Captain Minho walked through the ship, counting the faces he passed. So few, so terribly few. They had emerged from the quantum jump in a region of space that appeared on no maps. Around them, 22 other human ships floated like debris. Of the hundreds that had left Earth, only these had escaped. Minho had done the calculations. 40,000 people. That was all that remained of humanity. "Captain, we're getting reports from the other ships," Yuna said. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from crying. Everyone had lost someone. Most had lost everyone. "They want to know what we do now." Minho stared at the stars through the viewport. They looked wrong here. The constellations were alien, unfamiliar. They were truly alone. "We survive," he said quietly. "We find a place to hide, and we figure out what comes next." Over the following weeks, they explored the nearby systems. Most were empty, just rocks and gas floating in darkness. But then they found something. A planet. Not perfect, but livable. Breathable air. Liquid water. Plants that looked almost like Earth's forests before the burning. They named it Haven 1. The landing was rough. Half their ships weren't designed for atmospheric entry, so they had to be cannibalized for parts. Minho watched as humanity's remaining fleet was torn apart to build shelters on the ground. It felt like another death, but there was no choice. Taehyun Choi worked day and night on the salvaged equipment. He was a thin man with quick hands and a mind that never stopped moving. Before the attack, he had been an engineer on Earth's most advanced research station. Now he was trying to keep 40,000 people alive with broken technology and hope. "I've been studying the Council ships we damaged during the escape," Taehyun told Minho one evening. They sat in what passed for the captain's quarters. a prefab shelter with walls that rattled in the wind. Their technology is impressive, but it's not impossible to understand. Can we replicate it? Minho asked. Taehyun smiled grimly. Eventually. Give me a few years. Those years were hard. Humanity learned to farm alien soil and hunt alien animals. Children were born in the settlement, the first humans who would never see Earth. Commander Sora Jin, a former Special Forces officer, began training anyone who could hold a weapon. She was a stern woman with scars on her face and fire in her eyes. The council thinks we're dead, Sora told her trainees. That's good. Dead things don't need to be watched, and when they stop watching, we'll strike. In the second year, they found 2 more habitable planets, Haven 2 and Haven 3. The population was spread across all 3 worlds, reducing the risk that one attack could finish what the council had started. Communication between the worlds was difficult, but they managed. It was on Haven 2 that Dr. Yuna made her most important discovery. While surveying the planet, her team found ruins. Not recent ruins, but ancient structures that had been buried for thousands of years. The architecture was unlike anything the council used. Someone else was here, Yuna said, showing Minho the artifacts they'd recovered. Someone who predated the council by a long time. The ruins contained technology that still functioned after millennia. Machines that hummed with power from no visible source. Walls covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change when you looked at them. And at the center of the largest structure, they found a message. The symbols took Yuna months to translate. When she finally understood them, she called Minho immediately. The 5th cycle ends with fire, Yuna read from her notes. The 6th begins with those who were judged. What does it mean? Minho asked. I think the council has done this before. Destroyed civilizations they deemed too dangerous. That night Minho couldn't sleep. He walked through the settlement, watching his people work under alien stars. They had built something here. Not just shelters, but homes. Not just a camp, but a community. Humanity had been knocked down, but they hadn't stayed down. The revelation came in the 5th year. Minho was in his office when a stranger appeared. One moment the room was empty except for him, and the next, someone was standing there. Not someone human. Not someone from the council either. Something else entirely. The being looked almost human, but wrong in ways Minho couldn't define. Its features were too perfect, its movements too smooth. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. I am called the Wanderer, it said, though that is not my true name. I am the last of the architects, the race that built much of what you see in this galaxy. Minho reached for his weapon, but the Wanderer raised a hand. Peace, Captain Kang. I am not your enemy. I have been watching you since your escape. I watched your people suffer and survive. I watched you build new lives from nothing. And I have decided to offer you a choice. What choice? Minho asked. The Wanderer gestured, and the air between them filled with images. Minho saw worlds burning, civilizations falling. 4 times he watched the council judge and destroy species that threatened their control. 4 times, entire races were erased from existence. The council calls it the Existential Threat Protocol, the Wanderer explained. Any species that shows too much potential, too much creativity, too much danger, they are eliminated. You are the 5th to face this judgment. The others either accepted death or fled beyond the galaxy. None survived to fight back. Why are you telling me this? Minho demanded. Because you are different. The others broke when they were judged. They lost what made them special. But you, humanity, you did not break. You bent, you adapted, you survived, and now I offer you the means to do more than survive. The Wanderer led Minho to a hidden chamber in the ancient ruins. Inside was technology that made Minho's head hurt to look at. Weapons that could tear stars apart, ships that moved through dimensions humanity had no words for, knowledge accumulated over millions of years. This is the legacy of the 4 civilizations the Council destroyed, the Wanderer said, and the technology my people left behind when we departed this galaxy. Take it, use it, make your choice. Minho looked at the vault's contents. With this, humanity could flee. They could run to the edge of the universe where the Council would never find them. They could be safe or they could fight. Minho thought of Earth burning under Council weapons. He thought of the 12 billion people who had died in a single day. He thought of the children growing up on Haven 1, children who would never see their home world. We fight, he said. The Wanderer smiled. Then let the 6th cycle begin. Over the next months, Taehyun and his team began the process of understanding and integrating the architect technology. It was like teaching a child to read by handing them a doctoral thesis, but they persevered. Slowly, piece by piece, they began to unlock secrets the Council had thought lost forever. Sora trained new soldiers on new weapons. Una studied Council biology, looking for weaknesses. Ships were built in hidden orbital yards, incorporating human ingenuity with architect science. The result was something neither human nor alien, but something new. 10 years after Earth's fall, Minho stood on a cliff overlooking Haven 1's main settlement. It had grown from desperate shelters into a proper city. Humanity had gone from 40,000 survivors to over 100,000. Not through immigration. There was no one left to immigrate, but through sheer determination to continue existing. "We're ready to begin operations," Sora reported, standing beside him. "The Shadow Fleet is prepared. Ghost Squadron is in position. We can strike whenever you give the word." Minho looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Council continued their rule. They thought humanity was gone, forgotten, a mistake corrected. They had no idea what was coming. "Not yet," Minho said. "We have time. Let's use it. When we move, I want them to know we're not just survivors. I want them to know we're their reckoning." 15 years, he thought. 15 years of preparation. And then the Council would learn what humanity truly was. Not a threat to be eliminated, but a mistake they should never have made. 15 years after Earth's fall, Supreme Commander Minho Kang walked through the shipyards orbiting Haven 1. The title still felt strange. He had been a captain once, leading a single ship. Now he commanded the entire human resistance, such as it was. The shipyard stretched for miles, hidden from detection by architect stealth technology. 500 ships hung in their docking bays, each one a masterpiece of combined human and alien engineering. They didn't look like the sleek Council vessels. They looked dangerous, angular, built for one purpose: war. "The last batch is complete," Taehyun said, walking beside him. The engineer looked older now, his hair gray at the temples. Everyone looked older. "War aged you faster than time. We're at full strength. 500 ships, all equipped with quantum stealth drives and weapon systems the Council has never seen." "How many people?" Minho asked. 200,000 across all 3 Haven worlds and various stations. Not nearly enough compared to the trillions in Council space, but Taehyun smiled. "We don't need numbers. We have surprised they stopped before a particular ship. It was smaller than the others, built for speed and infiltration. The Ghost Squadron's emblem was painted on its hull, a human skull with stars for eyes." Captain Hana Shin dropped down from the ship's boarding ramp, landing with the easy grace of someone who had spent more time in zero gravity than on the ground. She was young, barely 30, part of the generation that had grown up during the exile. "Commander," she said, saluting, "the squadron is ready for the deep penetration mission." "How deep?" Minho asked. Hana's smile was cold. "The Nexus itself. We're going to map every system, every defense, every weakness. When we're done, we'll know that station better than the Council does." This was the reality of humanity's war. They couldn't match the Council's numbers. The Council had 47 species, trillions of citizens, resources beyond counting. Humanity had 3 planets and determination, so they didn't fight fair. They fought smart. General Sora Jin had written the manual herself, a document she called the Phantom Doctrine. Strike without warning. Leave no evidence. Vanish without trace. Never fight unless you can win. Never win if you can be followed. Never be followed if you want to survive. The Council thought in terms of fleets and territories. Humanity thought in terms of targets and shadows. Dr. Una Park's work had been just as vital. She had spent 15 years studying Council biology and psychology. She knew which species were loyal to the Council and which followed out of fear. She knew which planets were critical and which were symbolic. She knew, most importantly, how the Council thought. "They're bureaucrats," Una had told Minho once. "They've ruled for 10,000 years without serious challenge. They've forgotten how to fight a real war. They'll respond to our attacks with committee meetings and policy reviews. By the time they decide what to do, we'll have already moved on." The Cultural Preservation Program had been Minji Kwan's idea. She had been a teacher on Earth, running a school in Seoul. Now she ran schools on all 3 Haven worlds, ensuring that despite everything, humanity didn't lose itself. "We're fighting to preserve humanity," Minji had argued. "But what's the point if we become monsters in the process? The children need to know about art and music and poetry. They need to know we're more than weapons," Minho had agreed. The schools flourished. The children learned warfare, yes, But they also learned mathematics and history and philosophy. They painted pictures and played instruments and wrote stories. Humanity would win, but it would win as humans, not as something else. The intelligence reports came in steadily now. Captain Hana's Ghost Squadron had been running missions into Council space for 3 years, each one going deeper, learning more. They knew the Council's fleet positions. They knew their supply lines. They knew their secrets. And they knew the Council planned to dismantle the barrier around Earth. Minho stood in the command center, watching the holographic display show Earth floating in space. It still looked beautiful from a distance. The fires had gone out long ago. The atmosphere had cleared. From orbit, you could almost pretend nothing had happened. They want the resources, Agent Naricho explained. She ran the intelligence division, a network of spies and informants that had slowly infiltrated Council space. Earth is rich in rare elements. The Council plans to strip mine it. They're scheduling the operation for 6 months from now. 6 months. It wasn't enough time. Minho had wanted 5 more years of preparation. But if the Council tore Earth apart, there would be nothing left to fight for. Change of plans, Minho said quietly. We move now. The command staff looked at him in shock. General Sora was the first to speak. Sir, we're not fully ready. Another year? We don't have another year, Minho interrupted. Earth is our home. If we let them destroy it, what's the point? We strike in 3 weeks. The room fell silent. Then slowly, one by one, they nodded. The operation was called Retribution. It was simple in concept, impossible in execution. Humanity would attack 30 Council worlds simultaneously, striking at critical infrastructure while avoiding civilian casualties. They would move fast, hit hard, and disappear before the Council could respond. The goal wasn't to win battles. It was to send a message, we're alive. We're angry, and we're coming for you. Captain Hana led the first strike. Her squadron phased into normal space above a Council military station, appearing out of nowhere thanks to the architect drives. The station's defenses were impressive, designed to stop any known threat. But humanity wasn't a known threat anymore. Hana's ships moved through the defenses like ghosts, their weapons punching through shields that should have been impenetrable. They destroyed the station's power core and vanished before reinforcements arrived. Total time in combat, 4 minutes. Across 30 worlds, similar scenes played out. Humanity struck like lightning, leaving destruction and confusion in their wake. The Council scrambled to respond, but their fleets arrived to find nothing but wreckage and a single message painted across every surface. We survived. Now we return the judgment. The Council's reaction was predictable. Emergency sessions. Demands for information. Panic and confusion. Councillor Vextar, now elderly and frightened, ordered every available ship to search for the attackers. They found nothing. Humanity had learned the architect's tricks too well. Minho watched the reports come in from the command center. Every mission successful. Minimal casualties on both sides. The strikes had been precision attacks, not massacres. But the psychological impact was enormous. They're terrified, Yuna said, analyzing intercepted Council communications. They thought we were extinct. Now they realize we've been preparing for this moment for 15 years. They have no idea how strong we are or where we'll strike next. Good, General Sora said. Fear is a weapon. But the real weapon was truth. Dr. Yuna had spent years gathering evidence of the Council's past crimes. The 4 civilizations they had erased. The lies they had told. The technology they had stolen. Now she released it all. Every communication network in the galaxy received the same broadcast. Humanity's evidence presented clearly and undeniably. The Council had committed genocide 5 times. They were not peaceful guardians. They were tyrants who eliminated anyone who threatened their control. The galaxy reacted with shock. Some species denied it. Others began asking questions. Rebellions sparked on 3 worlds where species had long chafed under Council rule. The Council's unity began to crack. Admiral De Sung, Ryu led the fleet toward the barrier around Earth. He was a quiet man who had lost his entire family in the bombardment. His mission was personal. The barrier was massive, stretching around the entire planet, powered by stations at strategic points. Council engineers had built it to last forever. But they hadn't counted on the architect null field generators that Taehyun's team had built. Activating generators, Taehyun reported from his station. Field destabilizing in 3, 2, 1. The barrier flickered and died. For the first time in 15 years, Earth's sky was open. Daesung's ships moved into orbit cautiously. scanning for survivors. What they found was impossible. "Sir," the scanner operator said, her voice shaking. I'm reading millions of life signs, underground, in deep bunkers. They're alive." Minho felt his legs give out. He sat down hard, staring at the display. Earth hadn't died. Humanity hadn't been erased. Millions had survived, living beneath the surface, waiting, hoping. The communication came through minutes later. A voice from Earth, speaking English with an accent Minho hadn't heard in 15 years. "This is President Junho Park of the Earth Resistance. To any human vessels receiving this transmission, we survived. We've been waiting. Welcome home." The message that went out to the Council that day was short and simple. It came from both the fleet in orbit and from Earth's underground cities. Transmitted on every frequency, "You should have made certain we were dead." Minho stood in the command center, surrounded by his staff, and felt something he hadn't felt in 15 years. Not hope exactly. Hope had kept them alive. This was something stronger. This was certainty. The Council had tried to erase humanity. They had failed twice. Now humanity would show them what that failure cost. The war had begun. The war exploded across the galaxy like a storm. The Council mobilized its full military might, 10,000 warships drawn from 47 different species. It was the largest fleet assembled in galactic history, enough firepower to crack planets and burn stars. They came to crush humanity once and for all. Supreme Commander Minho Kang watched them come. In his command center deep beneath Haven 1's surface, holographic displays showed the Council fleets moving toward human-controlled space. Any sane military commander would have been terrified. Minho smiled. "They're doing exactly what we predicted," General Sorajin said beside him. Moving in traditional fleet formations, broadcasting their positions following standard tactical doctrine. "They've forgotten how to fight," Minho said. "They've spent 10,000 years being the biggest threat in the galaxy. They don't know what to do when something fights back." The Council's first major offensive targeted Haven 2. 3,000 ships arrived in the system, expecting to overwhelm the human defenses with pure numbers. What they found instead changed everything. The human ships didn't engage directly. They phased in and out of normal space, appearing behind Council vessels and disappearing before return fire could hit them. They struck from impossible angles, their weapons punching through shields designed to stop conventional attacks. One moment, a Council ship was surrounded by allies. The next, a human vessel materialized inside its shield perimeter, unleashed a barrage of fire, and vanished. It was like fighting shadows. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, Haven 2 stood intact. 1,400 Council ships were destroyed or disabled. The human fleet suffered 27 casualties. The galaxy watched in shock. Humanity wasn't just surviving. It was winning. Dr. Una Park's psychological warfare campaign reached every corner of galactic society. She didn't just broadcast evidence of the Council's crimes. She told stories. Stories of the 4 civilizations the Council had erased. Stories of their art and culture now lost forever. Stories that made people ask, could we be next? "The Council doesn't protect you," Una's message said. "It protects itself. Any species that becomes too successful, too creative, too powerful, they eliminate you. They call it the existential threat protocol. But who decides what's a threat? Them, always them." Minor species began to question their loyalty. Why fight for a Council that might one day judge them too dangerous to exist? 3 species withdrew their fleets entirely. Others reduced their support. The Council's unity, built over millennia, started to crumble. Agent Naricho completed her most audacious operation. After months of careful infiltration, she and her team penetrated the Nexus itself. They moved through the station disguised as members of a service species, invisible in plain sight. In the Council's own archives, they planted additional evidence of past genocides, ensuring that even if humanity lost, the truth would survive. But they didn't stop there. Nari accessed the Council's central computer systems and left a gift, a virus designed by Taihyun. Not one that destroyed data, but one that broadcast it. Every secret the Council had kept for 10,000 years began leaking to the public networks. The scandal rocked the galaxy. Council members tried to deny it, but the evidence was irrefutable. Their own records condemned them. The Battle of Kepler Crossroads became legendary. It was supposed to be a trap. The Council had gathered 5,000 ships in a strategic system, waiting for humanity to attack. Intelligence suggested only a few dozen human vessels were in the area. General Sora led the attack herself, commanding a fleet of 200 ships. The Council smiled when they detected her approach. 200 against 5,000. It would be over in minutes. What they didn't know was that Sora's ships carried Taehyun's latest innovation, the Reaper Protocol. Nanomachine swarms so small they were invisible to sensors, programmed to infiltrate enemy ships through microscopic breaches in their hulls. Sora's fleet engaged the Council forces in what appeared to be a desperate last stand. The Council ships closed in, confident of victory. Then Sora gave the order, release the Reapers. From every human ship, billions of nanomachines launched. They crossed the void in seconds, slipping through the Council ships' hulls. Once inside, they went to work. Power systems failed. Life support shut down. Weapons went offline. 300 Council ships went dark simultaneously, drifting helplessly in space. The remaining Council forces tried to retreat, but Sora's ships pursued. By the end of the battle, only 300 Council vessels escaped. The rest were captured or destroyed. Councillor Vextar watched the reports in horror. This wasn't war as he understood it. The humans didn't follow rules. They didn't fight with honor. They fought to win, using tactics the Council had never encountered. We need to negotiate, Councillor Threx said during an emergency session. Threx was a pragmatic creature, one of the few Council members who understood what was happening. We're losing this war. Negotiate? Vextar hissed. With the species we tried to exterminate? They'll never... They already reached out, Threx interrupted, displaying a message on the main screen. They're offering peace. A seat on the Council. Recognition as an equal species. Vextar read the message, then read it again. His mandibles clicked in confusion. This is what they wanted all along? A seat on the Council? Then why fight? Threx looked at the older counselor with something like pity. Because you tried to kill them. Because you proved that the Council can't be trusted. They don't want peace. They want justice. The message from Supreme Commander Minho confirmed it. His response to the Council's inquiry about peace was brief and cold. You don't get to judge us and then negotiate when you lose. Earth will be freed. The Council will answer for 5 genocides, and the galaxy will know what you really are. The siege of the Nexus began 3 months later. Admiral Daesung Ryu's fleet surrounded the massive station, cutting off all supply lines. It wasn't a quick assault. Humanity didn't storm the station with guns blazing. They just waited. Starvation is a weapon too, Daesung said when questioned about the tactic. They have enough supplies for maybe a year. We have time. And every day we wait, more species see the Council trapped and helpless. The psychological impact is worth more than a battle. Inside the Nexus, panic grew. The Council's member species argued constantly. Some wanted to surrender. Others demanded a final desperate counterattack. The unity that had held the galaxy together for 10 millennia shattered completely. 12 species formally withdrew from the Council. They didn't join humanity, not yet, but they stopped fighting. Their fleets returned home to protect their own worlds. The Council's military strength, once overwhelming, had been cut in half. Captain Hana Shin led the mission to board the Council's flagship, the Eternal Judgment. Her Ghost Squadron phased directly into the ship's main hangar, appearing out of thin air. The Council guards tried to resist, but they were trained for ceremonial duties, not real combat. Hana and her team fought through the ship with ruthless efficiency. They reached the bridge in 12 minutes. The Council's Grand Admiral surrendered without firing a shot. Your ship is now a human vessel, Hana told him, her weapon never wavering. Tell your fleet to stand down or we start targeting life support. The Grand Admiral complied. The flagship's capture demoralized the remaining Council forces. Ships began surrendering in groups, their crews no longer willing to die for a cause they no longer believed in. Earth's restoration had begun the moment the barrier fell. Millions of survivors emerged from their underground cities, blinking in sunlight they hadn't seen in 15 years. The surface was scarred, but life was returning. Plants grew in the ruins. Animals had survived in pockets across the globe. President Junho Park coordinated the restoration efforts while also providing support to the war effort. Earth's underground factories had been building weapons and ships in secret for years. Now they sent everything to the front lines. We never stopped fighting, Junho said in a broadcast to the galaxy. The Council thought they'd killed us. They had no idea that while they celebrated our death, we were digging, building, waiting. Humanity doesn't give up. Ever. The final confrontation came at the Nexus. Supreme Commander Minho arrived in person, his flagship dropping out of phase drive directly in front of the station. Behind him, 500 human ships appeared, surrounding the Nexus completely. Counselor Vextar appeared on the communication screen, looking old and defeated. "What do you want?" he asked. "Surrender," Minho said simply. "Unconditional. The Council will stand trial for genocide. The member species will be offered a choice: join a new federation based on equality or go their own way. The galaxy will know the truth about everything you've done. And if we refuse?" Minho's expression didn't change. "Then we finish what you started. But we won't stop at the Council. We'll dismantle every structure you've built, free every species you've controlled, and ensure that no one ever rules this galaxy again through fear." Vextar looked at the human commander for a long moment, then slowly he nodded. "We surrender." The war had lasted 5 years. In that time, humanity had faced the mightiest empire in galactic history and won. Not through superior numbers or stronger weapons, but through determination, creativity, and the refusal to accept judgment from those who had no right to judge. The trial lasted 6 months. Chancellor Minho Kang, his new title still felt strange, stood in the gallery watching as Counselor Vextar and 47 other council leaders faced judgment. Not human judgment alone. Representatives from 80 different species filled the courtroom, species that had suffered under council rule for millennia. The charges were simple: 5 counts of genocide, 4 civilizations erased before humanity, and the attempted erasure of Earth. The evidence was overwhelming. The council's own records condemned them. Vextar had aged dramatically since the surrender. His chitin had dulled, his movements slow. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, defeated. "We believed we were protecting the galaxy," he said. "The species we judged, they were dangerous. They would have disrupted the order we had maintained for 10,000 years. "Order," Minho repeated, standing to address the court. "You call it order. The rest of us call it control. You weren't protecting the galaxy. You were protecting your power." The verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. The sentence was life imprisonment, to be served on a secure station where they could never threaten anyone again. Some had argued for execution, but Minho had refused. "We're not them," he had said. "We don't kill because it's convenient. Justice, not vengeance." The old council was dissolved. In its place, a new government was formed, the Galactic Federation. Unlike the council, membership was voluntary. Species could join or remain independent. There were no judges deciding who deserved to exist. There were no threats to eliminate. The Federation's founding principles were simple: equality, cooperation, and the right of every species to determine their own destiny. No civilization would ever face judgment for being too successful or too creative or too dangerous. 23 species joined immediately. More would follow in the coming years. Earth's restoration became the galaxy's greatest project. Hundreds of species sent aid, technology, materials, knowledge. The planet that had once burned under council weapons became a symbol of hope. Cities rose from the ashes. Forests grew where there had been only scorched earth. Oceans cleaned themselves with the help of alien biotechnology. Standing in the restored streets of Seoul, Minho could almost forget the destruction. Almost. The memorials made sure no one truly forgot. In every city, in every country, monuments listed the names of the dead. 12 billion names. It took years just to carve them all. "We remember so we never forget," President Junho said at the dedication ceremony. "We remember what the council did. We remember what it cost. And we remember that we survived." Dr. Yuna Park became the Federation's first Secretary of Species Relations. Her job was to ensure that the mistakes of the council were never repeated. She established the Department of Existential Threat Assessment, but with a crucial difference. "We don't assess species," Yuna explained. "We assess ideas. We look at philosophies and policies that lead to genocide and oppression. We study hatred and fear, and we work to stop them before they can take root." It was preventive medicine for civilization itself. Admiral Sora Jin commanded the Federation's peacekeeping armada, 5,000 ships drawn from dozens of species, all trained in human tactics. Their mission wasn't conquest but protection. When a species called for help, the armada responded. When pirates threatened trade routes, the armada was there. When disputes arose between worlds, the Armada kept the peace. "We're not an empire," Sora told her officers. "We're guardians. We protect those who can't protect themselves. We stop wars before they start. And we never ever judge a species for their potential." The hardest challenge was helping the soldiers adjust to peace. Men and women who had spent their entire lives fighting suddenly had nothing to fight. Some struggled. Depression rates among veterans were high. Suicide was a constant concern. Minho established programs to help them transition. Therapy, job training, communities where veterans could support each other. It wasn't perfect, but it helped. Taehyun Choi left the military entirely. He returned to engineering, leading exploration missions to uncharted regions of the galaxy. His ships carried scientists instead of soldiers, their mission discovery rather than destruction. "I spent 20 years building weapons," Taehyun said. "I want to spend the next 20 building something better." Captain Hana Shin became an instructor at the Federation's new military academy. Young people from across the galaxy came to learn human tactics and philosophy. Hana taught them more than just warfare. She taught them why humans fought the way they did. "We were outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1, she told her students. "We won because we understood something the Council didn't. Survival isn't about being the strongest. It's about being smart, adaptable, and absolutely refusing to quit." The Nexus Station was transformed into the Museum of Failed Empires. Visitors walked through halls documenting the Council's crimes and the 5 civilizations they had erased. It was uncomfortable, necessary history. The museum's motto was carved above the entrance: "Never again shall one judge another unworthy of existence." Minji Kwan expanded her educational programs across the Federation. Schools on hundreds of worlds began teaching shared history, not just the victories but the mistakes. Human children learned about alien cultures. Alien children learned about humanity's struggle. Understanding grew where once there had been only fear. "Education is how we prevent the next genocide," Minji said. "If we teach children to see each other as people rather than threats, maybe we can break the cycle." 8 years after the war's end, Minho attended a ceremony on Haven 1. The planet where humanity had first hidden was now a thriving world, home to millions of humans and aliens living together. A new generation had been born, children who knew the war only as history. The architect appeared one last time. Minho had been expecting it. He met the ancient being in the same ruins where they had first spoken. "You passed the test," the architect said. 5 civilizations before you were erased and lost themselves to hatred and vengeance. They became what they fought against. But you, humanity, you stayed human. You sought justice, not revenge. You built something better instead of simply destroying what was. "We lost people along the way," Minho said quietly. "We did things we're not proud of. People died because of my orders. War costs," the architect acknowledged. "But you paid that cost without losing your souls. That's what matters. The 6th cycle is yours. Build it well." The being faded away, leaving Minho alone with his thoughts. 10 years after the war, Chancellor Minho retired. He was 70 years old, exhausted from a lifetime of leadership. He chose to return to Earth, to a small house in the mountains where he could finally rest. But rest was difficult. Some nights he dreamed of burning cities and dying worlds. Some nights he woke up screaming, convinced the Council's ships were coming. The cost of survival, he learned, wasn't just counted in the dead. It was counted in the memories that haunted the living. One day, a group of children visited his home. They were on a school trip learning about the war. They asked him questions about the battles, about the strategies, about what it was like to face the Council. A young girl, human, maybe 8 years old, asked the question that struck him hardest. "What was it like when you thought we'd lost everything?" Minho looked at her, at all of them. Human children, alien children, species that had once been enemies now playing together in his garden. "It taught us something important," Minho said slowly. "It taught us that survival isn't enough. We had to become something worth surviving for. The Council tried to erase us because they were afraid of what we might become, so we became something better than they imagined. We became proof that fear is the wrong reason to judge anyone." That night, Minho stood outside his home looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships patrolled alongside alien allies. Somewhere out there, children of a dozen species learned together. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was becoming what it should have been all along. A place where everyone had the right to exist, to grow, to thrive. The Council had tried to erase humanity. They had failed, but more than that, their attempt had created something they never anticipated. They had forced humanity to become stronger, smarter, more determined. They had shaped humanity's vengeance, and that vengeance had shaped the galaxy's future. Not into an empire of fear, but into a federation of hope. Minho smiled, looking up at the stars. In the distance, a transport ship passed overhead, carrying supplies to a colony world. Its hull displayed the Federation's emblem, a circle of stars representing every member species, with Earth at its center not as a ruler but as a reminder that anyone can survive judgment if they refuse to accept it, a reminder that the smallest voice can change the loudest empire, a reminder that being erased and staying erased are two very different things. The communication device on Minho's wrist beeped. A message from Admiral Sora. Pirates were threatening a remote colony. Did he have any advice? Minho smiled and sent back a reply. You know what to do. We're humanity. We don't quit. He went inside, leaving the stars to shine above a galaxy that was finally, slowly, learning what humanity had always known. That survival isn't about being the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced. It's about refusing to give up, even when the entire universe tells you you're finished.